Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to Spiritual Metaphysics 101. My name is Yaakov, and I'm your host. I'm also a student and teacher of metaphysics, as the title of our show, Spiritual Metaphysics, would indicate. And I have a particular spiritual path which we're going to lead off with reading, and that's A Course in Miracles. Here's a copy of my Course in Miracles book, and I'm going to be reading from lesson 121 in the A Course in Miracles book. The title of this particular workbook lesson is Forgiveness is the Key to Happiness. And starting down in the middle of the workbook lesson to Forgiveness is the Key to Happiness, it first describes the unforgiving mind as a contrast to the forgiving mind. So the unforgiving mind is in despair, without the prospect of a future which can offer anything but more despair. Yet it regards its judgments of the world as irreversible, and does not see it has condemned itself to this despair. It thinks it cannot change, for what it sees bears witness that its judgment is correct. It does not ask because it thinks it knows. It does not question, certain it is right. So this is the ego mindset, and this is the decision that most of us make most of the time. And we wonder why we feel guilty and sinful and, as it says here, filled with despair. Well, if the unforgiving mind, or the ego-filled judgmental mind, is the backdrop for despair, then the forgiving mind would be the antidote. And of course, the next paragraph in this workbook lesson says, forgiveness is acquired. It is not inherent in the mind, which cannot sin. As sin is an idea you taught yourself, forgiveness must be learned by you as well, but from a teacher with a capital T other than yourself, who represents the other self in you. So this other teacher represents our true self, which is always within us. Through him, and this would be, as you could call God, you learn how to forgive the self you think you made, and let it disappear. Thus you return your mind as one to him, reference to God, who is yourself, and who can never sin. Well, the undoing of the notion of sin leads us to joy and happiness and full self-expression of our true self. Whereas the despair stems from the unforgiving mind, where we project guilt and sin onto other people and think we're right. And we're judgmental and we attack them in our minds. So this is an introduction to our episode today. And the reason I focus on forgiveness so often is because I honestly believe that it's an accelerated path to awakening spiritually. So much of our lives and our minds, particularly the mind, the ego mind, is operational. And it's so operational all of the time that we're not even aware of it. So we want to heighten our awareness. We want to become skilled and attuned to that which we're thinking, not so much what's going on around us. And I know that's a little different from the Buddhist view of being awake and being attuned, if you will, to the outer, what you're eating, what your behavior is like, what others are like. We take that into consideration. But I think much more importantly, we look within to the mind, and we look at our thoughts, and we see whether we're in despair or are we in sinful joy, sinless joy. Sinless joy comes from a decision to get out of the ego mind and to forgive. Once we have forgiven, we then know this happiness and this joy that this workbook lesson is referring to. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. So it's a very simplistic approach. Look within to the mind, withdraw our attention from the outside briefly, and recognize that if we change our mind, then our perception of the outer world will similarly be changed. It's not an outside in, it's an inside out shift. And we look to not ourselves. We are not trying to be positive thinkers. We're not trying to be happy-go-lucky and walk around with a smile and act as if. We're honestly looking at our thoughts, and we're honestly then taking those despair-filled thoughts, filled with ego and being right, and thinking that it's irreversible and things can't change, and we offer those up on the altar of our mind. The altar of our mind is the crucible in which the Holy Spirit or God or the Buddha or the Tao, the higher power of your understanding, can then take it up and shift our perception from that despair and fear to love and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the symbolic expression of love in the world and in the body. In heaven, it's all love. In the world, it's symbolized by forgiveness because we condemn so readily. So the undoing of the condemnation and the shift from the ego to the Holy Spirit, part of our minds, then undoes the despair, and we know forgiveness is the key to happiness. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're having an argument with somebody, or even somebody that you don't care for, and you feel that you don't like them. There's a wonderful expression in 12-step work, and that's that you may not like all of us, but you'll come to discover that even if you don't like all of us, you'll love us in a very special way, the same way we already love you. The point to that is that we can take our likes and dislikes and put them on this crucible within our minds. Those thoughts are just trying to be right and make other people wrong. And all we need to do is take those thoughts of likes and dislikes and offer them up in our minds to the Holy Spirit, who then transforms them from like or dislike, which is a dualism type of perception and thought system, to one of unity. I am one with this person and I love them in a very special way, the same way they already love me and I already love them. We may not be awake to it, we may not be aware of it. Here's where our thinking again becomes so important. I have to be aware of my thinking and then offer up the negative, despair-filled thinking of the ego to the Holy Spirit, to the God present within. And it shifts to a love that transforms the like or dislike duality. All right, a little bit further into this workbook lesson, then I've got some other material I want to share with you. So it goes on to say, as you teach forgiveness, you will learn. Now I translated one of the words, as you teach salvation. Salvation and forgiveness are synonymous here. So as you teach forgiveness, you will learn it. Remember the point that the Course made, that this is something we need to learn. It doesn't seem to come naturally. Now that's a false idea as well. Many people will say, well, I can forgive, but I can't forget. It's something that happened and I can't let it go. But that comes from a metaphysical misunderstanding, that what actually appears is actually what happened. And I'm not going to get into all of the metaphysics of the illusory nature of our perception. Suffice it to say, if we're willing to suspend our belief that we're right, as it says here, just not think that we know, and question whether we're right or not. Suspend our belief that what we've perceived actually happened. This then allows us to move into that holy space of love symbolized in the world by forgiveness. So as you teach, you will learn this. Your learning will not be of you, but of the teacher, again with a capital T, who was given you to show the way to you. So this is God's gift, the emissary from the Creator to our minds. And this is the Holy Spirit. Today we practice learning to forgive. We practice it today. So anything that we're practicing, we're learning, aren't we? It's not something that we're adept at. If you're willing, you can learn today to take the key to happiness. But you have to make it a practiced, purposeful lesson every day in your life. And use it on your own behalf. Devote every morning and every evening, it says, to learning how to give forgiveness and receive forgiveness too. So not only are we extending the forgiveness, which is symbolic of the love of God, but we're extending it to ourselves, others, and ourselves. then we come to discover that whomever and whatever we're forgiving is really a mirror image and symbolic of ourselves anyway. So we wind up forgiving ourselves. There's that unity idea again. So today we practice learning to forgive. Then it says, giving and receiving are the same. Well, we've just discussed the more I give forgiveness, the more I receive it. And we'll try to learn today that they are one. Giving and receiving are one in truth. Through practicing forgiveness toward one whom you think of as an enemy or one whom you consider as a friend. It doesn't make any difference, because even the people you have as friends and you feel favorably towards, you're always on the verge. Well, first of all, it's based on judgment. If you like somebody, it's a judgment. If you don't like somebody, it's a judgment. Whereas forgiveness is suspending judgment. So it's a whole other thought system that and so this exercise says you can think of anybody, someone you don't like or someone you consider a friend. We can still practice forgiveness. That's why love in the world seems so difficult to hold on to, because it's based on judgment all the time. And we don't realize that love is changeless. It is not based on duality. It's not based on a feeling that people are abiding by our wishes or promoting our peace and our serenity or giving us what we want and what we need. It comes from the unconditional, timeless and changeless love center of God. And it doesn't depend on anything. It simply is, and that's the truth. All right, so we're going to move on now. I really appreciate lesson 121 in the workbook, because it is so foundational to the whole Course in Miracles. Please check out A Course in Miracles if you haven't had a chance to do that. It's available in bookstores and online, and you can certainly email me. My email address will be given at the end of the show if you have any more questions about it. And I would love to support you and encourage you to look into this spiritual path if you have the interest. A Course in Miracles. All right, now I want to go to, I beg your pardon, A Course in Miracles, Journey Through the 12 Steps. This is a book that I wrote. Maybe it's more aptly called a booklet. It's only 40-some pages long, 40 pages. But in this, I have an essay on forgiveness. So I want to keep talking about this accelerated path to enlightenment, which we've identified as forgiveness. And here I say in this essay that forgiveness is an accelerated spiritual path of enlightenment. We mistakenly thought we had separated from our Creator, which engendered horrific guilt and fear. That's that despair we were talking about. And thus the ego was born, in quotation marks. The guilt must be undone if we are to advance on our spiritual journey. So the ego and the guilt and the sense of sin, because we think we've separated from our Creator, must be corrected if we're to know enlightenment and happiness. I go on. We can use our ego world of perception as a classroom to learn forgiveness lessons. We made up our world, and with love we can forgive it while surrendering to Spirit. Be willing to forgive everyone. All minds are joined, and we are then healed. Be willing to forgive everyone. As all minds are joined, we too are healed, and our guilty, fearful thoughts are undone through the miracle of forgiveness. I can't emphasize enough how simple and yet powerful the whole nature of God-centered forgiveness and love is. If we were to simply practice that and that alone, with the teacher that is given to us with a capital T, all of the guilt and the despair and all of the negative experiences, anger, anxiety, depression, all of the fear-related emotions would be undone, because they don't originate in the world, they originate in our minds. And in our minds lies the teacher with a capital T, or the Holy Spirit. Well, again, be willing to forgive everyone. As all minds are joined, we too are healed, and our guilty, fearful thoughts are undone through the miracle of forgiveness. Well, that's my little contribution. And I'm also offering this booklet free of charge. So if you take down my email address, which will be given at the end of the show, I will mail it to you free of charge. No cost for postage or the cost of the booklet. And the reason I want to do that is because giving and receiving are one, as we had mentioned. The more I can extend this truth, which is timeless and changeless, the more I experience the truth within myself. So I am committed to extending God's love and forgiveness through any means and any media that I can. The TV with these episodes on this community channel, this booklet, some of the classes that I teach at the prison, and any other opportunity that the Holy Spirit presents to me, I want to take that up as fully as I can. So you can help me by, if you'd like, asking for a copy of this. Well, there's a teacher that I follow, and I'd mentioned him a couple episodes ago, Richard Rohr, Father Richard Rohr. He is a Franciscan monk. I had been unclear whether he was Benedictine or Franciscan, and I've since clarified that, and he is a Franciscan monk who writes beautifully. And this was an email. I've signed up for his emails every day, and he talks about mystical love. Well, if you recall, I said that salvation and forgiveness are synonymous, and that salvation and forgiveness are symbolic of spiritual love, the love of God. Well, here Father Rohr is writing about mystical love, just our topic, forgiveness. And he says that mysticism is a consciousness of the presence of God that by definition exceeds description and deeply transforms the subject who has experienced it. So this is the antidote to our despair, is this mystical love or forgiveness. As Father Rohr says, it exceeds description. We can't really talk about it with words, but we can point to it with words. But it transforms. This is on a metaphysical level, not necessarily on a physical level. Transformation occurs within, and it transforms the subject, that would be us, who have experienced it. Once I forgive you, can you get a sense of how it doesn't benefit the person or the object of the forgiveness necessarily, unless they're willing to accept it, but it does benefit me, because I have undone, if you will, all the sin and the guilt and the anger and the despair and the anxiety, simply by being willing to turn it over to that higher power for the transformation, or as he calls it here, this deep transformation that the subject experiences. Now, if it does not deeply change the lifestyle of the person, their worldview, their economics, their politics, their ability to form community, then you have no reason to believe that it's a genuine mystical experience. So there has to be both an internal transformation, where the despair is lifted and the fear is lifted, and then it appears externally, as he says here, it changes the lifestyle of the person. Now that's a process. The process where our worldview and our sense of economics and our politics and our ability to form community, our behavior shifts. And if it's genuine, then it's a genuine mystical experience. Now, it is often just people with an addiction to religion itself, which is not that uncommon. So he's making a distinction here between an authentic or true forgiveness and what he calls here just an addiction to religion, where in the name of forgiveness you go through the motions, but it isn't authentic. It isn't a true forgiveness. It's really more of a moralistic high ground which we take to say that I'm forgiving somebody. But we still think that what they've done we can't forget, and that it really happened. Remember our conversation about the metaphysics of the world. Everything that we see is really a projection of our own thoughts. So it doesn't exist in truth out there. But if I change my thoughts from despair and fear to forgiveness, then what I see out there changes, because it was a projected image of my thoughts in the first case. So he says mysticism is not just a change in some religious ideas or affirmations, but it is an encounter of such immensity that everything else shifts in position. Mystics have no need to exclude or eliminate others, precisely because they have experienced radical inclusivity of themselves into something much bigger. They do not need to define themselves as enlightened or superior, whereas a mere transfer of religious assertions often makes people even more elitist and more exclusionary. Good stuff from Father Richard Rohr. And he's also written a book called Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr. And I want to quote him here from his chapter on spirituality and the 12 steps. And he says, forgiveness is to let go of our hope for a different or better past. It is what it is, and such acceptance leads to great freedom as long as there is also accountability and healing in the process. So here he's saying that forgiveness lets go of our hope that the past will in some way be different. It only centers in the now, but the now is all we can experience anyway. Even if you have memories centered in the past, you're experiencing it now. So forgiveness is the great equalizer. It brings our future fears and the past guilts into the present, and it then gets transformed within our minds first, and then on the prescriptive screen that we see of perception. So the screen shifts as our thoughts and the projector shifts, and it is what it is. And such acceptance leads to great freedom, undoing of despair and guilt and fear, as long as there is also accountability and healing in the process. Well, this is what he was talking about earlier. You have your lifestyle change, or else it's hypocritical. It's nothing. A change of thought without a concomitant change in lifestyle, economics, politics, worldview, inclusivity and community, all that has to shift, or else it's just talking, and it's not walking in the faith and in the light. Nothing new happens without apology and forgiveness. He's making an absolute statement here, as does the Course in Miracles. Nothing new happens, pardon the finger wagging, without apology and forgiveness. It is the divine technology for the regeneration of every age and every situation. The unbound ones are best prepared to unbind the rest of the world. Well, that gets back to the point we made that when I forgive another, I'm forgiving myself. I become unbound. And in my unboundedness and my unbindedness, I can then help with the salvation and the unbinding of the rest of the world, as Richard Rohr quotes. Good stuff. Thank you, Richard Rohr. And I'll be quoting from him, I'm sure, more often. Now, finally, I want to refer to a favorite. I use Hope for Today, which is an Al-Anon daily reader. And this is the daily lesson for September 23rd, the day that we're filming this. And here, the daily reader talks about our compulsive need for perfection. Sounds judgmental, doesn't it? We're always in that ego mode of despair and not being perfect enough. It's a compulsive need for perfection, not forgiveness. But we learn that perfect behavior and achievement don't protect us from our fears. The more clearly I understand that perfection on an egoic level in the world and through judgment and dualistic thinking and I'm right and others wrong, that never protects me from my fears. But then the reading goes on to say, and it suggests a slogan. It says, repeat this slogan. How important is it? If I'm trying to do something perfectly, or I expect somebody else to be perfect, or I expect myself to be perfect, a slogan that we use is, how important is it? Well, it's not as important as my peace of mind. I'd much rather have my peace of mind than to have perfection and make things all out of proportion. So ask yourself, and the Course in Miracles uses a little different slogan. It suggests that we ask, what is my purpose? What is the purpose in judging this? What is my purpose? And here a slogan in the Al-Anon jargon is, how important is it? Let go of the irreversible thought of being right and that others should be judged, and turn within to that Holy Spirit, God of your understanding, for the antidote, forgiveness. Back again to forgiveness. Actions are about responsibility, not judgment. An unforgiving mind, unforgiving thoughts. And learn to be as gentle with myself as I am with others. Well, they go together. Gentleness extended is gentleness received. Forgiveness extended is love extended, is forgiveness received, is love received. Well, here's the thought for the day. What is my barometer for determining how important is it? Again, look at your thoughts. Are your thoughts loving and forgiving? Then you're answering the question, how important is it, reasonably and transformatively. And then you're on the right track. Then you're asking the correct teacher. How important is it? What are my thoughts leading me to? Judgment or forgiveness? And here's a quote. Most of the time I find that what I might have viewed as a disaster is really insignificant. Well, this is the projection is perception idea. I project out all of these, let me say, fundamental thoughts about my ontology. I've separated from God. I'm a horrible person. And I place them on insignificant experiences, and I blow them all out of proportion. So I have to understand that every thought of disconnection from my higher power gets projected onto everything I see in the world, insignificant or illusory as it may be. So it's always, a disaster which really is insignificant. Now, I need to identify the real issue, and that's my thought of separation from my higher power. When I know that I am one with the love that created me, I am as God created me, I then know that you are and can only be the love that created you, and that you are as God created you. And as we always like to say in these episodes, in the closing, that is our namaste salutation. The love in me acknowledges the spirit and the love in you. And then that spirit and love is brought back to me within my acknowledgement. It all comes full circle, and I hope that this has been a helpful episode. We'll see you next time. Namaste, shalom, and peace.